in something that we knew was coming for months because TKO talked about this very thing shortly after the Endeavor sale. Mark Shapiro, the president of TKO, talked about trimming down the number of live events or house shows that WWE does, with the focus increasingly shifting to their live television shows, which is where the real money is. I mean, just look at the billions of dollars they're raking in every year between NBC Universal and Fox, now Netflix and the CW network. Television is their main priority. Streaming is their priority. House shows are not, because they make the company very little money relative to TV. During an appearance at a Goldman Sachs technology conference, Shapiro explained that he feels there is less of a need for what he calls the marginally profitable shows. He said, "We're cutting events at WWE. We're taking our low-margin, marginally profitable events, untelevised events that Vince put in place to grow the brand. You're taking the show on the road, and we got to go to every city that we can to grow the WWE brand. Well, the WWE brand, while we still have to grow it, it's on fire right now. We don't need to carry these marginally profitable events. What was 300 events last year will be roughly 250 this year, and next year we will be close to 200. They've already cut back on the number of house shows. I mean, if you look at how many they have left between now and the end of the year, it's only around 10 or so, I think. He calls them marginally profitable. A few years ago, WWE house shows were not profitable. They were actually losing money on them. But because the product is so hot right now and they're running fewer of them, but at higher ticket prices, they do make money, but it's not a lot. Now, there are pros and cons to this. It's not, a surefire thing one way or the other. This is great or this is terrible. It really is a mixed bag. For the fans, house shows tend to be more fun. And I say that as somebody who has been to house shows before, as I'm sure most people listening to this have at least been to a few house shows in their day. They tend to be more fun because you don't have all the downtime that you get with the commercial breaks on TV. So you're constantly sitting there in the dark, you're watching video packages, you're watching ads, you gotta wait to come back from break. You also get more in-ring action, you get more matches, you get longer matches. The wrestlers tend to have more fun out there. They have the freedom to be a little looser. They can try new things, see what works, see what doesn't work. They try something that works, they can bring it to TV. If it doesn't work, then the only people who need to know are the people in the building that night. It's also a negative for the newer talents that are still learning. You can only learn so much at the PC. You need to be able to get out in front of an arena full of fans and work matches night after night to improve your craft and get better. That's one of the biggest benefits to house shows. It's not just working in the ring, but it's getting that fan feedback as far as what works and what doesn't. But I was curious. I took Maxine Dupree as an example. She was someone who was called up way too soon. And she has made some noticeable improvements of late, but she's still very green. She's the kind of person that NXT was created for. That's why they have a developmental system. That's why they have a performance center. And they never gave her a chance to fully develop because they just took her and threw her right into the frying pan way too quickly. And then people mocked her for it, which I'm sure was just, even harder for her. I looked up the matches, though, that she's had this year. Because you would think, this is where she's getting her reps in, right, at the house shows. She's hardly worked any house shows. You would think that they would have her in the ring on these shows every week, but she's worked less than half a dozen matches on the live events. So that just goes to show you how much they've already scaled back on them. So those are all negatives to doing fewer of them. They might be making them a little bit of money, but I look at them as something of a loss leader for the company. So you might take in little to no money from them, but you're betting that they're going to pay off for you in other ways. Whether that's increasing overall interest in the product, maintaining your current level of interest in the product. If they don't run some of these markets anymore, or they run them a lot less, interest in the product might wane. It might start to go down. Eventually, this bubble is going to burst. They cannot maintain this hot streak they're on for another 2, 3, 4 years. There will come a time where things are going to cool. And you hope that by scaling back so significantly on these shows, it doesn't happen a lot sooner than not. Right? But that's one potential risk they run. On the other hand, one of the knocks on WWE for years, and rightfully so, was its road schedule. Vince McMahon used to work these people like dogs. Okay, it was worse in the 80s and the early 90s. He'd be running A, B, C crews in different cities all in the same night. And then expect them to drive hundreds of miles just to do it all over again the very next. He would have them running hard for 3 weeks before they would even see the inside of their home. They'd go home and have just enough time to check their mail and pay their bills and then head back out to the airport to go do it all over again. The international tours, you would hear these horror stories. I mean, you listen to these shoot interviews from guys that were running that schedule back then. They'd run 2 weeks straight. Internationally, they'd be in a different city every night. They wouldn't even know where they were half the time. Combine that with the harder rings that they were bumping on for all those years, which is something I'm going to talk about in the mailbag later. And it's no wonder so many of them ended up addicted to pills and booze, among other reasons. But I'm sure that definitely played a role. Natalya, she just returned on Raw Monday night. They were in Calgary. She was doing a podcast interview this week. She said Triple H is just a cool boss. She just got eye surgery. She needed some time off. He told her, go get your eyes fixed. Take care of yourself. Don't even worry about it. And she said, it's cool to have a boss that's human. I don't think I've heard anybody else on the active roster put it that way and say that out loud. Like, we have a boss now that's actually a human being. Because that's how Vince treated his talent for so many years. He treated them like circus animals. I mean, he may have made them a lot of money. I'm not saying they didn't make a good living working for him. They say these things with a lot of money in their bank account and a nice house to show for it, but that doesn't mean that they should be on the road taking bumps 300 days a year, working that kind of schedule. Fewer house shows means fewer bumps. It might mean fewer injuries. I question that. I question that last point. I was thinking about that. You would think that running fewer shows removes the potential for injury. But I've heard it talked about in other ways too. When AEW was just racking up injuries left and right, and even now, I mean, they have so many people on their injured list. But there were people and even some wrestlers talking about the fact that one of the things you might be able to attribute that to is the fact that AEW does not run house shows. And there's just something to be said for being in the ring and taking bumps on a regular basis, where I guess maybe it just gets your body acclimated to it. And if you're not doing that, it could actually result in more injuries. So I don't know that any scientific study has been done about this, but I'm not necessarily sure that that does correlate. But fewer house shows means fewer bumps. It means more time at home with their family. And it might even help them when it comes to recruiting new talent and free agents that might ordinarily be drawn to AEW for the same reason. Tony Khan doesn't do house shows. You know, he lets a lot of his talent book their own independent dates if they want to work, but he himself does not maintain any sort of regular live event schedule. Some wrestlers that are drawn to that, they don't want to be on the road constantly. That was one of the reasons Bryan Danielson left WWE for AEW. Among other reasons, was he could not work that schedule anymore. He needed to work fewer matches. So it may be to their benefit, not to completely eliminate, but just cut down on the number of shows to make the schedule more attractive to people who might be interested in signing with one company or the other. So again, there are pluses and minuses to both. I think scaling back is a good thing. I think scaling back too much would be a bad thing. And based on what Shapiro is saying, they seem to be headed in that direction.